Welcome, golf fans, pursuers of knowledge in the almighty dollar. This is your golf guru bringing you the 2023 Genesis Invitational. Yes, it's Tiger's tournament, and he is back and ready to play, as he states. This is going to be my preview show where I'm going to give you all my research, background information, everything I know about the tournament and the course, followed up with some insights on who I'm looking to bet, and everything that you need to know if you want to get some bets in early or even start thinking about your DFS lineups, which of course I will be putting out the pick show tomorrow. And as everyone knows, I was on vacation, so it's great to be back. Sorry about missing. I tried to get you guys as much information as I could while I was traveling, so hopefully you checked out Twitter. I did get some research and stuff out there, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So with that said, thanks for being here. Give me about, 30 minutes or so. We'll get through this information. Let's go talk some golf. Okay, so we had one of my, as I mentioned, favorite tournaments. We had the Waste Management that concluded yesterday. And of course, we got another back-to-back winner. What does that make? Rory, and I'm forgetting Max Homa, right? He won the Fortinet back-to-backs. We've got now three back-to-back winners in 2023. And it was a good tournament. I mean, it was pretty interesting all the way down to, I think, probably the 16th hole when Nick Taylor actually missed his putt. Of course, Scotty made it beforehand, and that kind of set things in motion to where I think he had like a 3-shot lead. So amazing. Scotty Scheffler, we'll look at some of the stroke gain stuff, but the putter was really the issue for Scotty. He was playing solid golf, just wasn't getting up there far enough, and the putter was what was costing him. But man, did he make a lot of big putts when he needed them. That's what we're used to seeing out of Scotty when he's in contention. So we'll see. Does this set him off on a run? I mean, the Genesis demands all the skills that he has. And actually, Augusta, where they play the Masters, is a great comparable course. Problem is we don't have a lot of stroke gain data, but I think there's a lot of similarities to Augusta. But I'll talk about some of the comp course stuff when we get further in the show. And then I think, I always talk about the winners, but, I think sometimes to look at the guys that missed the cut, that was a little bit shocking. Of course, Colin Morikawa missed a cut. I think he ended up, 3 or 4 over. When I looked at his stroke gain stats very briefly, I think it was around the green and putting. Also wasn't spectacular off the tee, which, he doesn't have super length, as we all know. And you don't really, I don't think, need that at the waste match. Hence, Nick Taylor showed that you don't have, but, if you have deadly irons, like Nick Taylor did, and the putter, of course, a lot can get solved. And then you had last year's, Scotty beat Patrick Cantlay in the playoff to win his first tournament ever. Now, has 5 wins on tour. And Patrick Cantlay missed the cut. And Patrick's game has been suspicious. And I've been watching him pretty closely. I literally threw a live bet down when he had a chance on 18 to make a putt to make the cut to get to even. And I think it was like a 15-footer. He missed it. And I took the bet that he would be a top 20. I thought if he could just bait the cut and get in the weekend, watch out, but didn't happen. So kind of interesting. And then, of course, I had to bring up Nick Taylor, the Canadian. I think he's got 2 wins on tour. The one that sticks out of my brain was the win at Pebble Beach over Phil Mickelson. And it was, again, one of those things. I think it was 6,500 on DraftKings. I don't know what his odds were. I would guess like 150 to 1, 200 to 1 in that field. So it was nice to see that there was a shot to hit a long shot, because I feel like these designated elevated events have now kind of soured betting on golf. I'm not going to lie. My betting cards are just getting smaller and smaller. The odds that a long shot, especially in these elevated events, right? I mean, it was one thing when you had 2 or 3 guys that were top 25 in like the Waste Management or at Pebble Beach or wherever. Not so much Pebble Beach, not a good example, but like the Genesis coming up. You felt like, okay, there was a chance. But man, when some of the long shots have to beat 25 of the top rated golfers in the world, the odds of that happening are very slim. So, hence we had to take advantage on the West Coast, but we still had guys like Homo winning that didn't have good odds. So I don't know. I guess I love betting on golf, and I kind of feel like that the days of the long shot, and I've probably mentioned this before, are kind of long gone. Now if you hit a 50 to 1, you're going to feel like you hit a 200 to 1 in the past. So, but good on Nick Taylor. Great golf. I mean, I think as me, you had Hadwin and Nick Taylor up there early on, like midway through. And I was just kind of waiting for things to go sideways. Typically, Nick Taylor is not the greatest putter. that's usually what gets him. But I mean, the guy putted lights out. He actually gained the most strokes on the putting green that he's ever gained in his PGA career. We'll look at that here shortly. And speaking of that, we can take a look at it right now. So Nick Taylor, if you look here, gained 7.4. So, I was actually very curious about this. And the most strokes he's ever gained, and maybe it was at Pebble Beach, I don't remember where it was at, but it was 6 strokes with the putter. He did that twice in his career, and that's it. But you can see just it went en fuego with the putter. Everything else was good. Also even gained quite a bit around the green. But I mean, off the tee approach was not, outstanding. It was good. He was gaining 2 strokes on the field. And then you look at Scheffler, who just, lit it up with the irons. And the putter came back to hit that kind of 4-stroke gain mark where, if you kind of go do some stroke gain analysis on him when he wins, that's about where he needs to be. Of course, the Jon Rahm, the favorite. Oh, you know what? It's kind of funny. I didn't really mention Rory, even though he made the cut. Had what? I think it was a good, was it Friday? And then he had to like take that break, start back Saturday morning, and it just fizzled out. And it almost kind of looked like Rory, almost like he played the event because he felt like he had to. I don't know. I was kind of shocked. I mean, he played there once before, had a decent finish, I think, with top 15, something like that. But maybe that tournament, he kind of had some comments in his presser that, how I felt was good thing this is only, once a year. And I don't know. I don't know if that fits him. And also they were talking, and maybe I can agree with this, that where the bunkers are placed for like Jon Rahm and Rory, that, it's kind of in a lot of landing areas where they drive the ball. I don't know. I don't, I mean, you can sit here. I feel like, he had that little run that I mentioned. And then when it spurred out, when he had to come back, like I said, Saturday morning to finish that round, it just didn't happen. And then it was just like he kind of just was disinterested because I was shocked. He went out early on Sunday, had nothing to lose, and could just go out there. And, I was expecting him to shoot minimum 6 under. And I don't know where he ended up, but like 1 under or something like that, or maybe even. Like it wasn't what I was expecting. So that was also kind of a side note. But anyways, if you want to look at some stroke gain data, you can see here, I just pulled up like the top 10 guys. Sam Burns, it was kind of interesting. He had a really, shot 8 under on Saturday. He helped me out big time. And a little bit of background, of course, even though I was traveling, I still was very involved. At least on the betting side, I had to do live betting because in Florida, you can't bet there still. They have I think they had it for like a month, and then they got sued by some Indian reservation casino, and that's still getting figured out. So side note, if you go to Florida, get your bets in before you leave because sports books online are not available. But you can do DFS, fantasy, DraftKings, FanDuel, whatever, while you're there. So yeah, with all that said, I had a couple teams in the big game that, ended like cracked the top 500, whatever. Actually made some nice money on the showdowns and nothing that great on finale because I was expecting Xander and Homa to have a nice Sunday, and it did not happen. Nick Taylor, I wasn't really on him, thinking he would fall back. And then typically your leaders like Scotty Scheffler, they're not aggressive on those days. I feel like if you got a couple shot lead, 2, 3, 4 shots, you're going to make sure that you keep that lead. Of course, you want to make birdies, but not at the rate of you're trying to chase, like what you saw with Justin Thomas, who I actually had a lot of live bets on. I think I had him in 3 different, got him at 3 different kind of nice numbers. And man, was I pulling. He needed to do a little more on Saturday, and it just didn't happen. All right, I think that's enough about the waste management. Of course, the Genesis, this was the big news. I don't know if this came out on Saturday, I think it was, where it all kind of hit the waves that Tiger announced he was actually going to play this event, and I could spend 30 minutes talking about this, but I'm going to spend 2 minutes. Great for him. It's great for golf, and I'm kind of shocked he's doing it here. Now, I know this is his event, but this course, he's played it 3 times, if I remember off the top of my head. He's got a miscut, like a 50th or something like that, and then his best was like an 18th back like in 2018 or 19, whatever it was. But I mean, this course, it's got a bit of undulation, and what I mean by that is it's a bit hilly. It's a big boy course, and like I said, he's never really did great here. I was guessing maybe like a Bay Hill for Arnold Palmer, where he's won, kind of owned, and it's more of a flatter course. And what I thought, the biggest thing that I thought was interesting on this whole thing was that if you noticed, I was checking to see if they had the Genesis betting out yesterday, and they had one person listed, and it was Tiger Woods. They hung a 100-to-1 number out there, and in my head, I'm like, literally, you could have put $1,000,000 to 1, and I wouldn't have bet it. I would actually rather bet him making or missing a cut. And my money would be that he will miss the cut. Now, we'll see how that all goes. And I don't think it's not that he doesn't have the ball speed, and he does have some ball strength. I feel like his short game, especially the putter, every time I've seen it, has not been good. Even when he played, what was it, with against Justin Thomas, whatever, the match where he had Rory. I mean, if you watched any of that, it was all Rory that did anything there. And, like I said, I know there's Tiger Woods. I mean, the guy's done amazing for the game, and it's awesome that he's back. I'm not trying to down. I'm just saying, I'm kind of shocked that he's playing this event because I'm trying to figure out if he's going to play in the Masters, where I would guess for sure he wants to play. Is he going to play in the Players is where I would guess, but that's like a month before. So I'm just kind of odd that he's making his debut here. Again, it gives a shot in the arm. I mean, they've got the new, whatever it is, night golf, virtual golf thing that everybody's announcing to play in. So maybe he's trying to hype that. It's his tournament. I think he's there more just to test his game. As last I heard, he cannot use a cart, so he's going to have to walk this. And that's, he would say that that's going to be the thing that kind of taxes him. So he might have an okay day one, and we'll see what happens on day two. But again, if you find a place to bet, which I have not seen yet on make or miss the cut, typically in the majors they do that. I would actually rather bet him to miss the cut. That's where I'm at with that. But we'll see. I have been wrong on Tiger Woods before. I did not peg him to win the Masters back in 2019 now, is it, or 18? I get it mixed. So that said, let's go talk about the Genesis Tigers course. Of course, we are moved back into California, still on the West Coast. This is in Pacific Palisades, California. Of course, the Riviera Country Club, also known as the Riv. And this is where they hosted the LA Open forever. I believe that was Tiger's first PGA tournament, and also where Jack Nicklaus kicked off his career. So there was that kind of correlation. There's been some Tom Fazio, Reno, so if you're interested in that. But long story short, we're at a big boy course. And what I mean by that is how the course plays. It's a par 71, a little over 7,300 yards. Also, you got this Kikuya, which you're going to hear that 1,000 times and want to shoot yourself in the broadcast. But you have Kikuya fairways, Kikuya rough at 2-inch. That was verified today. We got the superintendent information. And, of course, we're back to that Poana, Plinko greens, true Poana, where, you saw the Poana trivials at Waste Management, which I'm still not really sure how to figure out what kind of real greens those are. It's kind of a hybrid mutt between like ryegrass and Poa trivials. And the player field's a little larger than it has been. So this, of course, was an invitational. Still, I guess, is an invitational. But it used to be 120 players. It's up to 134. Kind of what we just saw at the Waste Management. Again, this is a designated elevated field. So I'm guessing, we're 20 million for the purse. And probably about 3.5 million, like what Scotty just won at the Waste Management. And just total side note, I mentioned Nick Taylor won 2 tournaments prior. If you took his winnings for both those tournaments, he actually won more this past Sunday as a second place finisher alone that he did combined. So just kind of a side note there. Historical cut lines +1 to +3, somewhere around there. So again, this is a tough track. I mentioned the comp over to Augusta. Also, I kind of call it all the 5th majors. So there's some big boy courses. Of course, like we just saw at the Farmers, you got Wells Fargo, where they play at Quail. So we'll get in all that. But, that's kind of where you have to kind of comp out. It's a little tough because this is a unique, course, as in the style, the trees, the undulation, the very tricky greens, and POA. Like, it's a tough one to comp out, to be honest. Now, if you watched it last year, and this was actually one of my best outings last year in 2022 from a financial perspective, I just crushed it because I was all over Joaquin Niemann and Cam Young, and that worked out very well. And, of course, Joaquin Niemann set, I think it was the 36 and 54 hole record. So he went back-to-back 63s and ended up shooting 19 under to win that thing. And then I believe you had, Cam Young, as I mentioned, and Morikawa, I think, came in second, if memory serves me right. So that is a little bit of difference that I think the Niemann and Cam Young fits kind of, very well. Morikawa, it kind of leaned it's still an amazing ball striker, just not the same kind of distance. And then you go to Max Homa, where, you guys know I've talked heavily about, where he won the Genesis. And again, an amazing ball striker, and also just loves putting on POA. And that was that playoff with Finau, which, again, an amazing ball striker. So you can kind of see Adam Scott was your winner before that. You actually had J.B. Holmes, and then Bubba Watson's actually won here, I believe, 3 times off the top of my head. So, I mean, it is a true. It's kind of funny. I was listening to the PGA Golf Talk this morning, and they were saying, well, you don't have to be a great ball striker. The key is, around the green and putting. And I don't agree with that. Actually, at this course, I think you need it all. A lot, like I said, at Augusta, but I'm kind of working my way from tee to green, hence like Joaquin Niemann. I feel like that's a better fit for the guys that I'll be looking to play and bet on. Just a side note. You got very large greens, a lot like we just saw at the Waste Management, or if you think of the Tournament of Champions, also very large greens at Kapalua. You got 60 sand bunkers well placed. You got no water at all here, no water hazards. And these greens right now, what the superintendent are stating is 12 and a half. So they are very fast, very slopey, and very large. It's definitely one of the defenses of the course. It's also got a bit of a tree line. It's tight fairways, and you've got to work the ball both ways. And so, of course, when I mentioned Bubba, which I think has won here twice, that was one thing. He could work the ball. And then again, of course, the comp of him winning at Augusta and the Masters. The guy that I think of that's with us right now that doesn't hit the standard 300 some yard fade off the tee is Sahith Theegala. And I'll talk to him, we can talk a little bit more about him, but he's the one guy that I see works the ball probably more than anyone else. I mean, I think Justin Thomas and even Jordan Spieth, which I don't even know if he's in the field, but Justin Thomas, I would guess he is. But, guys that, actually embrace hitting draws, fades, knockdowns, all that stuff is typically the guys that do well here. Wind can be a factor. They're not too far off the Pacific Ocean, and I already mentioned the narrow fairways. And then, like I said, the rough isn't penal, but Kikuya is a different beast. Also, there's a kind of a, I don't know if it's in here in my notes. I haven't went through all that yet, but a lot of Australians have done well here. Hence, Adam Scott, a past winner. Jason Day, I think, is very interesting because a lot of those guys growing up and playing, that's their main grass that they play off. So they're very comfortable with Cam Smith. Has also done well here. I don't know about Leishman. I would guess Leishman's probably done, but I didn't go back and track that. I already mentioned a lot of this. So I mentioned the guys that work the ball both ways, the Augusta comp, especially from a green perspective. I like, tree line fairways, so it reminds me a lot of Quail Hollow. Murfield Village is also a good comp for me personally because I feel like Jack kind of designed that as, the Augusta National in Ohio, where, he's got the bent greens, he's got the trees, there's a lot of similarities if you start to break down Augusta to Murfield Village. You got the drivable number 10, which, I kind of stated here, only holds about 2% of the shots hit there, but that's like what we just saw at the Waste Management on number 17. There's that risk reward. The fairways are hard to hit. Only 50% of the fairways were hit, and only 60% of the greens were hit in regulation. I believe that was passed. So why around a green and putting is very key here. I already mentioned lots of elevation. The first hole is really the easiest. You start on a par 5, it's like 500 yards. We'll go through the scorecard very briefly. But that's kind of, as easy as it gets. And then it kind of just, the back 9 gets stronger. Then I mentioned Aussies at Sanderson Farms. I think could be a good comp. The problem is this field that we're talking about, hence Sahith Theegala, I think had a pretty good outing there. I think he had an 8th place showing like his rookie year. But a lot of these guys don't play Sanderson Farms. So you kind of lose that too. Oh, and then I also added one more additional note that just came out today. So again, I mentioned the tight fairways, that's whatever. But they've had a ton of rain, which if you watch the weather or if you're in the California area, and typically this area on average for a year gets about 12 inches of rain, and they've already received 11 inches of rain. So that's going to be interesting. And really, from a golfing perspective, will the greens be less firm? We'll see. That could be one thing where the shots are holding a little better. And will they grow the rough? So I was curious to see, because I kind of felt like, this is my own personal, again, opinion, that the way that Neiman went out and torched that course in the beginning, that I just felt like the superintendents and whoever ran the PGA director who runs this event was going to like raise the rough up. Like they were going to make it tougher. They were not going to like that Riviera gave up, because typically Riviera is known, as I mentioned, 12 under, 10 under, 11 under. It's pretty rare that someone would go 19, 20 under. So we'll see if the greens are receptive. because of all that rain. But you're also not getting rollout, so off the tee and distance is going to really come into be another factor. Is that rough going to be a little higher, a little stickier? Depends. And I also noticed it looked like it when I didn't look at the weather yet, but I think in the waste management they were showing some weather, at least in California. Maybe that was for the Super Bowl. It doesn't matter. Neither here or there. They were also still getting rain as we speak. All right, so real quick, we'll just go through the scorecard. Anyways, I mentioned the easiest hole on the course is actually the first, so it's a very gentle handshake. And like I said, the front nine compared to the back nine, the back nine is tougher by a bit, as you can see here. But again, on 10, 11, you get kind of a gentle handshake again. At almost maybe 1 through 18 is actually maybe a better shot at getting that birdie consecutive bonus because you got the drivable par 4. But, I've watched that hole a lot. And just because it's drivable, man, I've seen a lot of guys par or bogey that hole. It's not a given birdie, again, because the reception of that green. But maybe it'll be different if it's a little wetter. And then you got not a short par 5, but you got a par 5 that does give up birdies. So I don't know, just a thought process. And of course, I pulled the recent scorecard that was out today from the PGA Tour, and it's spot on. So we're all good on that front. There was no changes. I actually did see, I think there was some length changes to Augusta on 2 holes. Just side note, just was thinking of that. All right, so I already kind of mentioned what is past winners, and you can kind of see the names here. I also think Valspar, so where Sam Burns has won back-to-back at Eddisbrook, Copperhead is the course, is also not a bad comp. Now, a lot of those are Bermuda greens, but as that course plays, you need to be a very good ball striker. Keegan Bradley's done well there. But you can see if you go back, so this one really kind of, I think, calls out ball strikers. And then we look at last year, of course, it's going to do the same. But if you go back not too long ago, I think the field was not as good. But, guys like Scott Brown, that's kind of interesting. He's a pure plotter, Matt Kuchar. So, again, I guess, if you hit fairways and greens, but if you have that really good putting outing, as you can see here, that could definitely help. And again, the putter is needed. Max gain, 4.5. You had Sammy Burns gain almost 6.5, but it's irons around the green again. You can see off the tee, you don't have to gain a ton, but I think it definitely is going to help. And if we look more specifically last year, then you really understand that the ball strikers, and it's a better field last year than it has been, over the past, and this year is going to be even better. Again, with a designated elevated event, but again, Joaquin Niemann, Kyle Morcott, Cam Young. I mean, Cam Young, what's been hurting him, I would love to bet him here, but they just killed his odds, and he hasn't been playing that great at golf. Well, the putter's been atrocious. If you watched anything at the Waste Management, you just saw, I think he ended up 4 or 5 over for the tournament or something like that. It wasn't good, but Victor Hovland's done well here. Just, I think, one of the better ball strikers on tour. Adam Scott, one of the smoothest swingers. He struggled a little while ago with the driver, but he's right back at it. I think Jason Day, which we'll talk about, I think it could be a really good bet, and someone that I actually will be looking to play from a DFS perspective. But yeah, all these guys, Matt McNeely, who, that, if you saw, I tweeted it out, I think it was on day 2 literally he putted it in the water and then WD'd. Now, right, he WD'd also from Pebble Beach, but, somehow he's got this shoulder injury that, he had to pull out of that tournament, and then he had that, and then he's like, oh, my shoulder injury. Very weird. And Matt McNeely's, I think, my personal opinion, he's been doing it a bit with smoke and mirrors, and what I mean by that is right here, the putter. The guy's been gaining on average like 9 or 10. It's been ridiculous. Now, he's got length off the tee, but the irons have been bad, and you can see wasn't good here last year. The sneaky guys, I call this who's the third wide receiver that's going to go off, and what I mean by that is if you play DFS football, it's always, the guy that wins the big money. I'm talking like the $1 million. Somehow you find that third wide receiver that's done nothing all year, just goes in for Wago and then does nothing the rest of the year. That's a lot like golf. I mean, getting the guys that are going to end up in the top 10, these guys all make sense. But finding the Nick Taylors or the CT Pans or the Ches Reeves, those are the guys that you need at the bottom that, get you to 6 of 6 and end up with a top 10 finish. That's the guys that will make the big money. As always, and just that's kind of common sense, but that is the trick. Honestly, the trick of winning from a DFS perspective is finding that it's always that one guy in the $6,000 range on DFS that's going to make the top 10. You figure that out, and you typically do very well. All right, so let's move on. What stroke gain skill? So, of course, I'm going to build you guys custom stat model. I'm going to show you the research that I've done already prior. Kind of calling this now just the stroke gain skills that you need to focus on players. And we've already talked quite heavily about this. But of course, ball strikers for me, number one off the tee, especially if it's going to be wet. We're going to need guys that gain length but still keep it in play and keep it on the fairway. Approach is always one of the key stats. So you notice typically when we get in tighter, shorter courses, approach is going to be number one. When I get to these longer, more that fit the bomber, if you want to say, the guys that hit it further off the tee, I always go to ball striking off tee. And like I said, you got to make that choice. If sometimes you work your way back from the green. I'm working my way from the tee to the green on this one. But then around the green, putting is definitely a thing that you're going to need here. I mentioned all the assets, all the skills have to be there. The one proxy of the pin, I shortened this model. Like I said, I told you as I've been doing this year after year, I keep honing it to call out the areas more. If the more stroke gain areas that you put in your model, you kind of just saturate it all out and you don't really get the guys that should be popping, at least again, from a statistical, standpoint. But proxy to the pin 150 to 175 is the number one I'm going to focus on. It comes in at 26% of the time on this golf course. And then again, we got 6 of these longer par 4s, and that's why I put this in, because I don't usually like these, like gaining strokes on, this par 4, that par 3, that par 5. But I'm doing it on this one because what this calls out to me is if you can handle a 500-yard par 4, you are a good ball striker. So it's just kind of doubling down on that side. And then last but not least, I showed you, on average, this course, I would say somewhere around 12 to 13 under is where the winners come in. You had last year with Joaquin coming 19 under. We'll find out. I think that's a golfer getting better. And they've really no changes have been done to Riviera in forever. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes this time. But I would be shocked if we got back to a 19, 20 under. I would think somewhere around 16 under is about where this will end up for being the winner. But we'll see. It's all going to come down to weather. All right. So with all that said, of course, I have created some custom stat models and get you guys the research that I've already been doing. And you're going to notice here, you're going to see the betting odds. I think that's coming from MGM, just so you know where those numbers are. And this custom stat model is going to call out what I just stated. And then here you can see the weighting of each of those stroke gain categories. So, pretty heavy on ball striking at 20%, off the tee at 15. Approach, I still weighted higher. But really, those 3 categories is ball striking. So I'm putting, 60% of the model, on ball striking. And then 10% around the green, 10% on putting. Typically there is quite a few putts outside of 20 feet here. So putting is going to be necessary. There's that prox to the pin that comes up more than 25% of the time. Those par 4s, again, kind of doubling down on the ball striking at 5. And then we need guys to make birdies still. Sometimes I go in between on these tougher tracks. Do I want to go with more bogey avoidance versus birdies? But I'm going to kind of stick on the birdie side at this point. Put all that together, and the top 15 players in this field over the last 6 tournaments they played, or 24 rounds. This is looking at waste management stroke gain data is involved in here, just so you know. Number one, funny enough, with that, that's why I checked it, was because Rory still pops up number 1. And you got Tony Finau, which makes total sense. And same with Rory. I was curious if he'd moved down a little bit because of his stroke gain data that came in out of waste management. Jason Day, I already mentioned, very interested. Of course, got the Aussie background out. Jason Day has been over here forever, so I don't know how much that really matters, but, it's still, he should be comfortable with that grass. You got Scotty Scheffler, of course, your number 1 again in the world. Sungjae Im, good outing at waste management. Will Z, we're going to talk about him from a betting perspective. I'm a bit interested in that. Also kind of shocked that he did not play at the waste management, but I guess he's probably going to play quite a few times here in a row, so had to find a break somewhere. You got John Rahm, Max Homa, king of LA. I've already put a bet on him for the U.S. Open at LA Country Club, and I'm happy with that. I'm not happy where his odds are right now, and so we'll talk about that when we get to the betting side a little more. You got Xander Schauffele, who, when we get to the comp course side, I think could be interested there. You got Colin Morikawa, Soo Kim, great ball striker. You got T-Hat, nice showing at the waste management. Tom Ken, Ben Taylor, the rookie, who's been playing really good golf, and then Joel Damon, funny enough, who hits a lot of fairways, good with the irons, just typically pretty rough around the green and putter at times. Okay, so the next thing, as always, we look at now historical. So we looked at recent form, and everybody has their feelings about is it horses for courses versus. I always like recent form probably a little heavier than I do what have they done on this course, but I think both are applicable. Now, I've had people ask me, do you weight it in your head 50-50? I would always probably lean towards guys that are in better form. So where I'm going with that, if a guy is playing like trash, but he's going to a course that he won at, I wouldn't be like, oh, for sure he's going to do well here. It helps, but again, just stating that if you're curious. Now, same thing against that same model, and this is pulling up. I guess I looked at I wanted recent history. So I pulled up just the last 3 rounds they played on this track. Some guys you're going to see, like Cam Young, played it their first time in their rookie season last year. Victor Hovland's only played here twice. But anyways, right off the bat, Victor Hovland, who fits against this model, Max Homa, a past winner. This also justifies my model. I always keep an eye on, when I look at historical winners, I should see them up at the top, or something's wrong with my stroke gain model. Adam Scott, past winner. Morikawa came in second. Young came in second. John Rahm, this should fit in very well. Of course, the Torrey Pines kind of also comp course. Justin Rose, you got Xander, Patrick Cantlay, Finau, Scheffler, Matsuyama, Justin Thomas, Tommy Fleetwood, who I believe missed the cut at the Waste Management, and Fitzpatrick, who I think might have made the cut on the number. He barely did, and I think he had a pretty good Sunday. But anyways, that gives you, also, I think he's still dealing with that neck injury. I did not play him at all in DFS. I didn't touch him at all on anything. And until he shows me a little better form, but this course would be actually a good course for him, is why I bring him up. I don't know where he's at with the neck thing, but it's been a couple weeks, so hopefully it's better. And then if you're interested, I used to kind of use this for a one and done perspective. It was always interesting to me to see the guys. So this is at this tournament on this course over the past 5 tournaments here, how they done from a total stroke gain and also positioning. Really, we're looking at total strokes gain. This would be off the tee, approach, around the green, putting all combined. And Adam Scott is your number one, who won back here. It was actually his last win in 2020. You got Tony Finau. Funny enough, you got the Jason Days, Ricky Fowers, and Adam Scotts all playing better golf. So kind of interesting one of those guys popped. I got Tony Finau. Of course, I mentioned the playoff he was in with Homa 2 years ago. You got Xander, of course. Homa won. He had a T10 here last year. Patrick Cantlay, California kid, also does well typically on POA, but I mentioned I'm kind of very leery of his game right now, but we'll see. See if it changes. These guys can flip on a dime. Rory, not the greatest showing, but this should fit him a little better and has a pretty good track record here. You got John Rahm, JT, who had a nice showing here last year in 2019, but also missed a cut twice. Victor Hovland, back-to-back top fives. James Hahn, also who lives in Vegas and typically does well, made the cut at the Waste Management. Morikawa, Patrick Rogers, that's interesting. So I was going to bring him up, right? So I was all over Patrick Rogers, have a good showing at Pebble Beach. I believe he came out like 4 or 5 on. He ended up missing a cut, if I remember right. Or maybe it was his Torrey. I take it back. Maybe this was at the Farmers. It doesn't matter. He's also Stanford, California. And he went out and just torched the course at Waste Management. I think he shot 8 under. And I'm like, where was this, prior when I was betting you in, California? But hey, we're back in California. And he's a great ball striker. Typically, it's around the green and putting, that kind of gets him. But hey, 125 to 1, maybe that's a long shot. I did not put that on my betting card, but it is one I might take a shot at. You got Hideki, who's been, he was struggling off with the driver. Already had some injuries last year. I feel like the driver he was trying to figure out, but just never pull it together from a putting and around the green. But the guy's an amazing ball striker. And if that flips, we all know what can happen. Kuchar, I mentioned, has had a pretty good showing here. Jordan Spieth, Young, and then Wyndham Clark. We'll talk about him from a betting perspective. All right. The other thing that you're going to, typically, because POA is a very unique surface, and there's some guys that are good at it, and there's some guys that are not. And if you're new to this, what's the difference with POA greens? Is they're very blotchy. I call it like Plinko. If you remember Plinko from The Price is Right, where these areas grow up as the day goes on, and so your ball can hit that, and it can bank back and forth. You just get in a true roll more in the afternoon, not so much in the morning, because, of course, if they can, they're going to cut these greens and roll them typically every day. So that's also why a lot of guys who play Showdown like to pick guys in the morning, especially on POA. right off the bat, you get the better putters within the PGA Tour. This was looking at 24 rounds, just looking at the putting strokes gained. Denny McCarthy had an okay waste management, if I remember correctly. Kuchar, he did pretty well. This, could fit him. Like I've shown you, he has shown up here before. Kisner, I've got one of my listeners here who we've been going back and forth on Kevin Kisner, and of course, I think he missed a cut at the waste management. I still think his game's trash. I'm going to stick with that. The guy doesn't have elite skill, typically the putter. He's a bulldog. Give him on a short course, hence Pebble Beach. That was where we were kind of back and forth on, and I just said I can't go with a guy who's his irons were trash. I think he missed 8 cuts the previous year. I need more than Kisner to do. He needs to be elite with his irons and still have the putting, but his game could come back. And of course, that the match play is where typically everybody likes to play Kevin Kisner. That's where he kind of shines. Xander Schauffele, Adam Scott, JT Poston, Hughes, Rahm, Mark Hubbard. He's not been playing good golf at all. Wyndham Clark, Matty Wallace had a chance to make the cut at the waste management, missed it by a stroke. Home of Seb Straka. I haven't said that name in a while. I didn't even know he was in the field. Justin Suh and Troy Merritt. Justin Suh hosed me. I think it was at Pebble Beach. He was not good. Okay, now one that I'd probably be more interested in, like I guess if you said, well, if I was going to go with your list here, would I rather play the POA putters or the ball strikers? I'd play all these guys before I'd ever worry about how well they do on POA. I put it in there so if it's something that I research, I've always told you guys this, I'm going to give you that information too. So right out the bat, top ball striker, Scotty Scheffler, Roy, the big names, Colin Morikawa, even though he had not a great outing, but we've seen Colin Morikawa miss a cut and literally his next event come out and win. So, do not count him out. Tony Finau, Jason Day, Tom Hoagie, where I kind of feel like his game has kind of went a little back. I think he's regressed a little bit. I don't know if his irons are firing. I mean, he's still saying number 1 on approach, but there's been some spots like Pebble Beach, shorter courses. I actually like Tom Hoagie, but it's just his putter. You got Corey Connors, not the greatest waste management, but I always said he's a cheap man. Victor Hovland, I've always said off the tee, and I mean Victor's got a little more distance off the tee, but very accurate, very good with the irons, but around the green and putter is just bad. Will Z is actually very interested in me from a betting perspective. Xander, Brendan Steele, just a ball striking genius, but it has been for like the last year, but not good with the putter around the green. Gary Woodland, I think he barely made the cut, and then I think he had a pretty decent Sunday, not a good Saturday. Sanjay M, Nick Harding, I like him, great ball striker, and John Rahm and Cameron Young. If you ever put a ball striking team together and you need a cheaper guy, Nick Harding is your man. He has killed me once or twice on Showdown, funny enough, but he can go out a lot like a Corey Connors and shoot 5 under one day and then go out and shoot 5 over the next. And it's all because of around the green and putter with him. John Rahm in last, I threw in Cameron Young here, which, I mean, yeah, he came in 15th, but you can see the putter and around the green right here is what's been killing recently Cameron Young. All right, so I mentioned a little bit about comp courses, and I said this, I'll tell you guys when I think it's like, hey, this data here, I would, like when you get in smaller, tighter tracks, I like the comp course information. I'm not saying this is bad, but I'm just saying to comp Riviera is tough. And the closest to, I think, is Augusta and the Farmers, where they, Torrey Pines South to be specific, not North. Other than that, I threw in a couple bigger tournaments or big boy kind of courses, tougher courses. Hence Murfield Village, you got Quail Hollow, which they did not play there last year. Remember, they played TPC Potomac because of, what was it, the President's Cup, I believe it was, if I remember now. But anyways, what I was getting to is I also included, which is not on here, Valspar, Innsbruck, and Bay Hill, because I wanted a little more than just those 4. And I liked the list. I'm not, Xander came out number 1. It makes total sense. I mean, just a guy that can grind on the big boy tracks. Rory McIlroy, JT, Colin, that whole list there, I like it. I'm just saying that. So where I'm going with all this, scratch off Tiger Woods, because really he's played, 4 rounds of golf in the last 2 years. So don't count that as pulling in old data. But the rest of these guys, and then Fitzpatrick, you got to make the call if he's still dealing with a nagging neck injury. He stated that he didn't have the ball speed at least. That was I think it was at Torrey the Farmers. I don't know if he played. Maybe it was Pebble Beach. It doesn't matter. Maybe it was Pebble Beach. And then you got Sahith Theegala. I added him in here 16th because you can see on these big boy tracks, he's been able to manage and do well. So note to self. But yeah, I like that list. I have no problems. If that was going to take, except for remove Tiger Woods, include Sahith Theegala, I think that's a good, if that 15 players, if you're only putting, 4 or 5 teams together in DFS, and if it would work, I think, I don't know, there's not enough cheap guys, so you'd have to add some cheap guys, but that's a great list. All right, so with all that said, let's get to the betting card, and then we can wrap this thing up. I'm gonna let you know right now, I'm always upfront about this, where actually I have money and who I'm going to bet. And the first bet I made this morning, I had money left over a little bit in the account from the Super Bowl, which I didn't talk about. I'm not going to get into. I think you guys have heard a ton, but it was a good game. Okay, I'll talk about it very briefly. I thought it was a good game. I was thinking, Philly should have won. Of course, the turnover killed them early on. I felt that took some momentum away, but really they were just outcoached. That's the sum of it. Yes, the penalty at the end did not need to be called. It was a ball that was overthrown, and I don't know why they called it, but hey, great for KC. Amazing what Patrick Holmes did. We'll call him 80% healthy, Patrick Holmes, and still to win that game, and then having the wide receiver talent that they have and still pull that out. I mean, I don't know. I give him a ton of credit. I was, probably like a lot of people, especially at halftime, never thought Philly could lose that game, but it happened. Okay, back to the betting card. Sorry, I had to get that out. I was going to do that at the recap, but I thought, you know what? You're going to hear enough about football talks. I told you at some point I do plan on in the fall probably doing some football shows. So again, it's going to have to be unique and different to help you guys. I'm not going to just put something else out there because there's 1,000 guys that do football. Okay, I digress. Back on target. So where I was going with this, the first bet that I made this morning, because I like the number that they hung on Taylor Montgomery, 80-1. And if you don't know a lot about Taylor Montgomery, what he does very well is drive the ball very long and usually pretty accurate, but also didn't really show up at the waste management, but typically is a very good putter, where he actually struggled. For some odd reason, he really struggled on those greens. I like him here. And so that was the first and only bet at this exact moment that I have money on. The guys that I'm going to bet and want to get in, I just haven't had the chance, is Wyndham Clark, Jason Day. Now, I'll tell you why. So Wyndham Clark, very good off the tee, he's been playing good golf, had a good waste management, was up there in the leaderboard, I think, day 2, day 3, fell back a little bit, I think, but also is a very good putter on POA, where he has had success putting, and not too far from a Taylor Montgomery, hence they're actually, same odds. They do drive off the tee and putt very well. It's the irons, and if the irons go, then they go, but that's part of it. Jason Day just been playing good golf, and if you got to watch a bit of him, they showed him quite a bit. The guy just burned edges after edges, or could have actually been a chance to win that tournament. And it was just ridiculous how many edges that guy burned. So I like his game. And also I mentioned the Kikuya Australian reference to hit the Gala. The reason that I like him is, the mention that he can work the ball back and forth, and why that's necessary. I didn't show you a course map because there's not a really good one out there. And I could have walked you hole by hole, but I've told you guys, go watch, footage, if you've never watched this tournament. But there's, they bend the tee ball. You got to bend right and left on different holes. And the one guy that I think of off the top of my head that does that very well is Sahith Theegala. Cameron Young, I was a little disappointed to see that 33 number. I think it's even worse on DraftKings Sportsbook. So I'm going to wait on that until maybe I get a better number either later in the week. I have noticed that DraftKings very early on is putting this very vanilla, I don't know if they don't know how to do the odds on these guys, but they're like taking the top 10 guys and just making them crap. Like, you don't want to bet them. So I'm hoping the odds change, especially like on the Homas, 18-1 on Homa. No. Finau 18-1. Like, that doesn't even make sense. Those numbers need to get a little better, or I won't bet it, or I'll wait for a live bet and wait till they, some Joe Schmo goes up the leaderboard on round 1 and then give me better odds. So that's why also I've not put a lot of bets. But the guys that if I had to only pick a few, I mean, Will Z, I'm very excited about. I already told you I've got money on Taylor Montgomery. My long shot is Montgomery and Wyndham Clark. That's about as long I would go. Who else was I mentioned? There was someone. Oh, Patrick Rogers. Maybe I'll take a stab at him at 125. We'll see. But yeah, that's the guys that I'll be looking to bet. You're going to notice, there's certain times where I'm super excited about the tournament to bet. I'm probably more excited on a DFS side and a showdown side because I've had a lot of success in the past here with that, but I will do some betting, and that's where I'll be. All right, I think that's enough. Hey, I appreciate you guys spending a few minutes with me, and it's going to be cool. The Tiger Woods effect on tournaments, there's the good and the bad. The bad is that's all we're going to be pushed down our throat for the coverage, no matter where he's at. If he's not playing good, if he's playing great, it's just going to be all about Tiger. So that part, it gets a little nauseating for me from a golf fan. But hey, it's great for the game. I would love to see him do well. I'm not wishing Will. It's just an odd place that he's going to have to walk a very tough course and hasn't had that great of success to make kind of his, again, debut for the 22nd time, whatever it's been. So, all right, guys, as always, hey, hit that like button. You know the drill. Share it, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, especially as some of you guys say, hey, I missed the information you typically give out. Well, I actually did quite a bit of it through Twitter. It was the only way I could do it. Another reason why, if I, for whatever reason, can't do this, I will still get the research out there by doing, just screenshots and whatnot. So, all right, guys, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I will have my pick show out. I'll have probably look at ownership. Either it'll be tomorrow or Wednesday, but I'll probably aim for tomorrow. We'll go through the player analysis, kind of deeper dive, and all that fun stuff for you. So check me out tomorrow for the pick show, and talk to you later. Take care.